I have started a small allocation shift out of buying Treasury bills at auction each week into buying Treasury notes in the secondary market maturing in the 2027 through 2033 time period. I will be buying 5 Treasury bills at tomorrow's auction. That's January 13th, down from 10 in the prior week. And I will be buying at least 5 Treasury notes in the secondary market maturing in the 2 to 8 year time period. I will be averaging about 5 per week. Hopefully, the yields will continue going up. The reasons for shifting some money now into Treasury notes is that my bond ladder is currently close to full with over the 6 month time period for Treasury bills and is too light in the 2027 to 2033 time period. I'm now able to pick up higher yields with Treasury note purchases than with Treasury bills whose yields are in the 4.25 to 4.5% federal funds range now. I noted earlier today, reading an article, that Goldman Sachs had reduced its prediction from 3 to 225 basis point cuts this year, with one cut in June and the other in December. The reason for that reduction in the number of rate cuts is the last jobs report, which unnerved both bond and stock investors last Friday. If the Fed does cut by 50 basis points before year end, and I view that as unlikely but possible, the 3 month Treasury bill will decline by another 50 basis points by February 2026, bringing the yield down from its current 4.25 to 4.3% to around 3.8%. As Treasury notes go up in yield, they become slightly more attractive than the bills for me for current income generation. And I'm also playing the scenario that the Fed will continue to cut interest rates with those kind of purchases. I will be discussing some Treasury note purchases in my next post, as I have done in the last two. All the ones that I will discuss are $1,000 par value Treasury notes maturing in 2027 through 2033. The YTM slopes slightly in that maturity range, going from about 4.4% for a Treasury note maturing in 2027, slightly higher maybe, to 4.75% for one maturing in 2033, which I bought that had a 4.5% coupon last week. All have coupons of 4% or higher that I've been buying. When going that far out in maturity, I want most of my YTM and a Treasury purchase in the current yield. At 4 to 5.5% yield from a Treasury note will not help most people achieve their financial goals over time. It is what I call running in place investment that currently provides me with a positive real return adjusted for the past 12 months personal consumption expenditure, inflation, and further adjusted down by my marginal tax rate. So it is a real return after taxes and after inflation for me. Safety first and running in place are fine for someone who does not need to grow capital and is of advanced age. But that is the best that I can say about it over the long term. What is left after inflation and tax adjustments are not sufficient over a long time period to achieve what is necessary to meet financial goals prior to retirement and spending requirements during retirement, except for those in the top 10% of household assets, and those would be not the high spenders, but the more frugal households. And that does not account for rates going back down and driving the real and tax and after-tax yield back in negative territory, and making matters even worse for households that need significant growth in assets and who rely too heavily now or in the future on short-term Treasury bills, money market funds, CDs, and bonds. For me, and this is why I have turned into a capital preservation mode in my 70s, a 4% annual income at on my total investment portfolio, realized primarily through interest income and secondarily through dividends and capital gains, is sufficient to pay all of my living expenses, and I have no debt. And those would include major expenses like a new roof that I installed last year, without having to dip into my principal amount that is currently generating that income. That is the reason if someone is reading my blog, they see a very conservative approach to investing. That's because I place an emphasis on capital preservation now. That was not the case when I was younger. I am consequently in my mid-70s in a risk-off mode. I reduced my stock allocation during 2023 and 2024 and redirected the proceeds primarily into Treasury bills and short-term corporate bonds. I can use corporate bonds for more yield than Treasury since I live in a state with no state income tax, which is Tennessee. I will consider adding more risk through stock purchases when credit risk-free yields in Treasuries or minimal credit risk in a diversified short-term corporate bond portfolio fall below 4% for new investments. I have started out 2025 with a slight net add to my stock allocation, which will accelerate with further declines in dividend-paying stocks, particularly those where the dividend yield is now over 5% due to the price declines over the past several weeks, are hitting new 52-week lows, and there are many of those dividend stocks now, and are down more than 20% from the recent 52-week high that they had. That tells you where my brain is right now. Most of the market gains within the last year or so are in a few high multiple technology stocks that are least vulnerable to a significant multiple contraction from their current elevated price earnings ratios. And many or almost all pay no dividends or minuscule dividends. I'm never going to reach a point in my stock allocation now where a 30 to 50% decline in the S&P 500, which has happened several times in my lifetime as an investor, would cause me to lose any sleep, but will instead simply be viewed that when that scenario occurs, if it occurs again in my lifetime, as a buying opportunity to increase my relatively small stock allocation. I am a contrarian value investor, mostly by my nature. I would need a brain transplant to change now. And part of that is based on a realization that dividend-paying stocks may be bought during a time of disfavor, like now, particularly when interest rates are rising, undercutting their appeal as bond substitutes, but will most likely recover at some point and permit me to exit the position with an acceptable to me total return down the road somewhere, hopefully in no more than 2 or 3 years, possibly sooner. I'm not thinking about long term. There's also some benefit to me in buying stocks that pay qualified dividends that have a maximum tax rate. 15% for me, maybe 20% for if you fall into a high income tax bracket, and using funds that were earning income based that would be taxed at the ordinary income tax rates. I have the option to time selling stocks when my income has declined due to lower interest rates on bills, notes, and bonds. I anticipate that 2025 will be roughly level with my interest income in 2024, which was the highest in several years for me, given the Fed's jihad against the saving class that took rates down to near zero for an extended period of time. I will be publishing a new blog next Thursday that goes into some of the investments that I've discussed here.